Hello everyone, this is Muhammad Imran. You're learning linguistics and literature with Imran. The topic for today's discussion is speech versus writing. How speech is different from writing. In other words, what is the difference between spoken language and written language? So let's begin our today's lecture, speech versus writing. So let's examine difference between speech and writing. So here is the first difference between speech and writing. Speech is time bound. By time bound, we mean that the speaker and addressee both are required to be present on a particular occasion. For example, if I am a speaker and I want to deliver a speech, so I need audience. So audience are my addressee. So my addressee can be one person or maybe one person. But both participants are required to be present on a particular occasion. That's why I say time bound, right? Like if one person is present, if a speaker is present and addressee is not present, so it does not fulfill the criteria of a speech. So for a speech, both participants are required. Similarly, that speech is dynamic, right? Opposite of static. And speech is also transient. Transient means it is not permanent. It is for a short time, right? So speech is transient, right? It's temporary, it's not permanent, while writing is permanent. And speech is dynamic, right? If you commit a mistake, right, so you can correct yourself. While writing is static. Once a mistake is done, you cannot correct yourself, right? Similarly, that speech is time bound. Both participants are required to be present, right, on the time or on a particular occasion. While for writing, that is space bound. It's not time bound. So that is the first difference between speech and writing. We will elaborate more. It is explanation of the speech. So it is part of an interaction. What? Speech is part of an interaction in which both participants are usually present. And the speaker has a particular addressee or several addressee in mind. So when a speaker speaks, so he has a particular addressee in his mind or in her mind. And that addressee can be one person or more than one person, right? On the other hand, writing is space bound. If I write here, right, so it's not important. If I write to you and you should be also present here, you will be somewhere else. That is called space bound, not time bound. Speech is time bound, right? Both participants are required to be present. And writing is space bound. You might be living somewhere else and I am living here, right? So if I write to you, right, and my writing, my letters or whatever writing is there, it would be delivered to you. So writing is space bound and it is static. It's not dynamic, right? That's why that you have to be very, very careful when you write, because once you commit a mistake and you send a letter or you send your writing to someone, so okay, so then again it cannot be corrected, right? So you have to be very, very careful. And permanent. So again, writing is a permanent document, right? It's not temporary. So you have to be very careful whatever you write because it is permanent one. So it is the result of a situations in which writer is usually distant from the reader. That's why we call it like it's a space bound. And often does not know who the reader is going to be. You might be writing a book and you don't know that who would be my reader. Or you might be writing something else, an essay or an article. So you don't know that who are your audience or who are your reader. So that's why we call it that it is space bound, right? Spontaneity and speed of most speech exchanged make it difficult to engage in complex advanced planning because of spontaneity. So speech is spontaneity, it is spontaneous, right? At the same time, both are there. And speed of most speech exchange make it difficult to engage in complex advanced planning. So for like complex advanced planning, it is difficult to engage yourself, right? Now, the pressure to think while thinking promote looser construction. On the one hand, there is speaker. On the other hand, there is addressee. So if your addressee thinks what you say, so it will have a looser constructions, right? So your addressee will not get you completely. And there is also repetition, where in speech we have repetition. And there is also rephrasing. And there is also comment clause, such as you know, you see, mind you. So intonation and pause divide long utterances into manageable chunks. But sentences boundaries are often unclear. You don't know where one sentence ends and another sentence begins. So what you learn about speech, right? Because of your addressee, your receiver will think what you say and it will promote looser construction, right? So your addressee will not construct what you say. And there'll be repetition because several times you will repeat, right, one thing, and there'll be rephrasing, sometimes you will rephrase, and comment clauses such as you know, you see, and mind you. And intonation and pauses divide long utterances into manageable chunks, right? But what's the problem? Sentences boundaries are often unclear, while in writing sentences boundaries are clear. Second difference continue here. By contrast with writing, there is always a time lag between production and reception. So time lag is there. For example, if I write something to you, right, you can read it like tomorrow or day after tomorrow, or you can read after a week, you can read after a month, and even you can read after a year. So there is time lag between production and reception. If I produce something, so you're busy, you're not interested, you have some issues, you can read it later on. While spontaneity is one of the features of speech, and there is no time lag in speech. So writer must anticipate the effect of this lag as well as the problems posed by having their language read and interpreted by many recipients in diverse settings. Because if you are a writer and there will be different like audience and they will have different contexts. So your writing may be interpreted differently. So you should keep in mind, right, that I may have different or diverse audience and they belong to different cultures. So you should keep in mind that there should be no ambiguity. There should be no like misinterpretation what you write. So you have time, right? And you should think, you should be very, very careful if you write something. Writing allows repeated reading and close analysis, right? So when you speak, right, so you're speaking or your words go to the wind, right? Or they go with the wind. So they disappear. While in writing allows repeated reading. Your writing can be reread, right, many times. And there be close analysis of your writing. As I told you, right, when you speak, your words go with the wind, They disappear, right? But once you write, right, so your writing may be several times read by your audience and promote the development of a careful organization and compact expression, right? Like we learned that there's repetition in speech, and there is like a comment clauses, okay, and there is like we have different, like I think, right, you know, okay, mind you. So these are like comment clauses. But in writing, we don't have such things. You don't have to make repetition, right? With often intricate sentences structure, and the sentence structure is intricate. Unit of discourse, sentences, and paragraph are usually easy to identify through punctuation and layout. So there are clear boundaries, okay, where one sentence ends and another begins, right? The punctuation, proper full stop and comma, semicolon, etc. While in speech, you don't have such things, right? So sometimes speech creates ambiguity, while write, it doesn't. Here we have the third difference between speech and writing. With speech, because participants are usually face-to-face, so they can rely on such extra linguistic cues as facial expressions and gesture to aid meaning, okay? So when there is speech, so you're face-to-face. So you have to also pay attention, focus on extra linguistic cues like body language, facial expression, tone, gestures, because they aid meaning. And the lexicon is often vague, right? The words we are using, they are vague. Using words which refer directly to the situation, didactic expressions such as that one in here right now. In speech we write these didactic expressions. Right now may refer to 8 o'clock right now. Right now may refer to 10 o'clock when you speak, or right now may refer to like 2 o'clock when you speak. So that these didactic expressions are vague. Similarly, in here may mean my room, or in here may mean your room, or in here may mean a classroom, right? So we have didactic expression which create ambiguity in speech, or the lexicon we use, right? These are lexicons. So they create ambiguity. So what we learn in speech, that because you're face to face, you have to pay also attention to extra linguistic features, tone, facial expressions, body language, because they aid meaning to what you say. With writing, lack of visual context means the participant cannot rely on context to make their meaning clear. So we don't have such kind of extra linguistic cues in writing. Nor is there any immediate feedback. We don't have immediate feedback in writing. We have immediate feedback in speech. So most writing therefore avoids the use of didactic expression. So didactic expressions then are not mostly used in writing. They use names to clear ambiguity. So which are likely to be ambiguous? What are likely to be ambiguous? Didactic expression. Like here, there, right now, right, tomorrow, yesterday. These are didactic expressions. The fourth difference between speech and writing. Many words and constructions are characteristic of especially informal speech. So we use contracted form or like constructions such as contracted form like isn't. So lengthy coordinate sentences are normal and are often considerable complexity. So there is a nonsense vocabulary, for example, things magic or obscenity and slang, some of which may appear as graphic euphemism like okay, and you understand or what do mean by this F. So we use slang and where in speech. They are called graphic euphemism, right? So nonsense vocabulary are also part of speech, not writing. Writing displays different characteristics such as multiple instances of subordinate in the same sentence, and subordinates are not used in speech. and elaborately balanced syntactic patterns, and the long, often multi-page sentences found in some legal documents, long sentences. Certain items of vocabulary are never spoken, such as longer names of chemical compounds. So these are only in written documents, not oral one. The fifth difference between speech and writing. Speech is very suited to social or fatigue function, such as passing the time of the day. If you're free and you want to pass the time, you can interact with other person to have some stories, to narrate something, or to have gossip, right? Or any situation where casual and unplanned discourse is desirable, right? It is also good at expressing social relationship. You're somewhere and you want to express social relationship and personal attitude. So due to the vast range of nuances which can be expressed by the prosody and accompanying non-verbal features, writing is very suited to the recording of facts and communication of idea, because your writing is recorded, it is kept as a permanent source, and to task of memory and learning. So written records are easier to keep and scan. Tables demonstrate relationship between things. Notes and lists provide mnemonic, and text can be read at speeds which suit a person's ability to learn. It depends on how much speedily you can read. Now here we have speech versus writing, difference number 6. With speech, there is an opportunity to rethink an utterance while the other person is listening, starting again, adding a qualification, right? If you think, okay, that you're wrong, so you can rethink. However, errors once spoken cannot be withdrawn. The speaker must live with the consequences, right? Interruptions and overlapping speech are normal and highly audible. With writing, errors and other perceived inadequacy can be eliminated later draft without the reader ever knowing they were there. So, interruptions, if they have occurred while writing, are also invisible in the final product. So, here we have the last and the 7th difference between speech and writing. Unique feature of speech include most of the prosody. The many nuances of intonation, nuances mean slight differences, as well as contrast of loudness, tempo, rhythm, pause, and other tone of voice cannot be written down with much efficiency. You cannot write, okay, intonation and contrast of loudness, tempo, rhythm, pause, and other tone of voice, right? You cannot, it's only the characteristic of speech. Organization and several aspects of punctuation, right? Only a very few graphic convention related to prosody, such as question mark and italic. Several kinds of writing, for example, timetable graph cannot be read aloud efficiently, but have to be assimilated visually. So there are features they cannot be used in spoken language or in speech. For example, like several kind of writing, timetable, graphic cannot be read aloud. Fine, like efficiently, but have to be assimilated visually. When you focus and you assimilate visually. So thank you so much. It was all about the difference between speech and writing, and we discussed 7 differences between speech and writing. So please don't forget to subscribe and like the channel, and please provide your feedback too about the lecture. Thank you so much.